Welcome, and thank you for joining us at our very first meeting of 2022. I'd like to welcome all of you who haven't actually been with us before, and welcome back all those that have. I don't want to take up too much time talking, so I'll simply say that to learn more about the Roundtable, please go to our website. We have a good comprehensive website, and that will be posted in the chat, and follow us on Facebook. Also, if you have any questions or any queries or interested in ways you can volunteer, I encourage you to email us. Similarly, the email address will be in chat. And if you would like to join our mailing list and receive our updates and our monthly e-newsletter, please email us at the same address and just send your name and your email address, and you'll be added to our mailing list. Right, let me make sure I'm fearful I'm going to forget something today for some reason. I don't know whether the cold has frozen my brain, but I've actually made some notes to remind myself what to say. We have been in, the Roundtable has been in existence for, I want to say 20 something years. I'm never quite sure how many years it is now. Is it 23? I think so. And is a group of people, volunteers, that gather together regularly once a month to share ideas, thoughts, and initiatives. And our overwhelming mission is to diminish and abolish relationship violence and abuse in all its forms. And in order to do that, we spread the work between various volunteer-run groups and committees. For instance, the program committee today organized this in conjunction with our newest group, the White Ribbon Group, which you'll hear more about, and that's the reason we're all here. And we all form this fabric, which is the Roundtable, and we all together sit around that big round table to share experiences, ideas, thoughts, programming plans. We just regularly meet to do that and move towards our mission. So if you're interested in volunteering, we welcome you warmly. And I'll just, before I hand over to Colin to start the session about the White Ribbon Group, I would just like to update you on an upcoming initiative of ours, which is the Valentine's Gift Bag Program, wherein all residents of shelters and traditional housing run by our partner organisations within our Roundtable receive a Valentine's gift bag on Valentine's Day, all children and all adults. And our outreach committee does this amazingly great job of collecting gifts, arranging for the bags to be decorated, and dropping them off to all the shelters and transitional housing units. And this year we're having a drop-off in 2 sites. In the past, we've actually enjoyed the hospitality of the Sayer family at Sudbury Wine and Spirits. And they happily have opened a second store in Maynard for Digital Way, which is in that new development next to Market Basket in Maynard. So there'll be 2 drop-off sites for these little gifts, and and you can drop off items between the 4th and the 11th. And you will, if you're on our mailing list, receive information of the kind of gifts we're looking for. And again, a reminder of the drop-off sites. So that's coming down the pipe towards you at some point. And with that, I think, unless anybody else has anything they'd like to say, I will hand the session over to Colin McCarry. And again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Colin, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
We're going to go. Sorry about that. I think you can hear me now, right?
Yes, yeah, we can.
Great. Well, thank you for having the White Ribbon Group join you today. I think it's very important, and we, speaking on behalf of them, I know how appreciative we are of your support. The folks that are with me from the White Ribbon Group are Carmine, Jason, Paul, and Malcolm. Is there anybody else joining us? Anybody I missed? I think I got everyone. So we're going to speak for a few minutes, and we're going to speak about our involvement in the men's group, which we call the White Ribbon Group. And as we speak, we're going to be answering 3 questions. What led us to be a part of this group? What are we hoping to accomplish as members in this group? And what are the members of this group and why others might consider joining? So in general, it won't be an exact answer to those questions, but in general, that's what we're thinking about as we introduce ourselves. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about biographically, but each person will just speak for 2, 3, or 4 minutes, just introducing themselves and just answering those questions in general. So if it's because I'm facilitating, I opted for myself to go last, so I'm going to pick on, and actually Carmen and I are going to talk a little bit about an event in March, which is a little plug for our annual gathering that will invite others to. So I'll ask Carmine to go first and to introduce himself and answer those questions. Thanks, Carmine.
Well, thank you, Colm. So my name is Carmen Gentile, and I came to the White Ribbon Group. I had practiced law for many years, family law and criminal defense. And in that context, I've come across a lot of instances of domestic violence, partner violence. And so I was attracted to the Domestic Violence Roundtable years ago. I'm also a member of a municipal group that coincidentally always has its meetings at the same time and day. So I wasn't able to attend a lot of the roundtable meetings. And when the White Ribbon Group came up, I thought to myself, well, this is a great way to work with other men to do things to diminish the amount of partner violence, about violence of men against women, not only by helping people that have had incidences of it, but to try to see what we can do to prevent it from happening. So I've really enjoyed being a part of the group. I think that any man who appreciates that there's too much violence in our society, too much partner violence, too much violence against women by men, this is a group that men can work in to see that there's less such violence in the future and deal with what we have right now. Thank you, Colm.
Thank you, Carmen. And do you want to say anything about our March event?
So thank you. You know, we will be having a March program entitled Compassionate Accountability Conversations for Youth. And we will have speakers from a group called the Growing a New Heart, which is a consortium of social justice leaders whose mission is to facilitate deeply respectful and ethical power relationship and communications in our communities. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means we have 3 people that will be presenting to us, Jack and Jason Patrici, a husband and wife, who have worked in the area of, Jason worked in the area of dating violence prevention education in high schools for many years, and he has been a certified facilitator for over 25 years. His wife, Jack, is the founder and principal of a Growing New Heart, a group of leaders in the healing arts, moving us to profoundly respectful relationships. And Jack has worked with sexually trafficked women and children in over 40 countries. And they will have with them Reggie Wingo, who began working with at-risk youth back in 1999, specializing in youth programming on healthy relationships. He's a well-known community artist who also uses his theatrical talents to engage both youth and adults. And he is actually co-authoring chapters in a book, called Compassionate Accountability Conversations with Youth. So I'll turn it over to you, Colm. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carmen. And Jason Verhusky, would you mind going next and just saying what led you to join the White Ribbon Group?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Verhusky. I am the Director of Youth and Family Services here in the town of Wayland. A lot has led me to being a part of the White Ribbon Group. I've been working in youth development or youth services for a little over 20 years at this point in time. Starting off my career working with the Department of Social Services and DCF at the time, and with youth in residential programming. Seeing a lot of different situations throughout that, and different situations and navigation of the services, really led me to want to work in prevention, both in substance abuse prevention, which is a large scale of the work that I do, as well as focusing on violence prevention and really providing youth with effective tools and resources to be able to have healthy relationships, with a strong focus in primary prevention, but also harm reduction. So really meeting youth and families where they're at and helping them with the navigation of whatever services they need. As far as the White Ribbon Group is concerned, it was one of the things where I've always heard incredible things about the Domestic Violence Roundtable. Peripherally saw some of the services and some of the work that was being done, and working very closely with Malcolm, who you'll hear from shortly. He mentioned that this group was happening and invited me in, and was incredibly grateful that he did. I've been to have the opportunity to meet some wonderful people, have incredible conversations about the services that are available in the region, as well as different programs and efforts that we can do. Hear about different perspectives on it, and also be able to bring better resources and tools here to the community of Wayland. So that's a little bit about myself and why I'm here.
Thank you, Jason. And staying on the Jason theme, could Jason Hoy, would you please be next?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Hoy. I am a Dean of Students at Natick High School, currently now for the 9th grade. I also coach a couple of sports here at Natick High School. I taught health and physical education for a long time here prior to taking on this role. In terms of the White Ribbon Group, what made me join is, we had a connection with some staff at Voices Against Violence, and they, I run a group here at Natick High School called Game Changers, where we have juniors and seniors, 11th and 12th grade students, that come through a number of different trainings on healthy relationships and mentors and violence prevention. And our model is we train the juniors and seniors to get into sophomore health classrooms and lead, peer-to-peer facilitation discussions on healthy relationships. And it's been tremendously successful for us. We have between 30 and 40 kids each year that take on these leadership roles, and they span the whole 10th grade every year. So we hope to outreach the entire building of our 1,600 kids here. So I've been involved in that work now for this is year number 6. What led me to join the group was working with Voices Against Violence. Lauren actually a few years ago was at one of our events that we had for our community here in Natick. So I've kind of been tied in on the periphery, but I'm in the group less than 1 year. So I was sort of a rookie, so to speak, but it's important to me because, I have 3 daughters myself. I have 2 older sisters myself. I have a lot of women in my family that have been impacted by some kind of dating or domestic violence. And this is work that's meaningful to me and on a personal level. What am I hoping to accomplish by being part of this group? I hope to gain some more resources and knowledge and understanding to bring back to the kids at Natick High School, because I'm a firm believer in that, our kids' perceptions of relationships are ever evolving and changing, especially in the 21st century with technology and the amount of social media and pop culture at their fingertips. So I try to really get them to put the technology away, engage in more personal conversations to change or allow them to reflect on their perception of what relationships are, what a healthy relationship is. Just some of the benefits and, why others would maybe want to join the White Ribbon Group. It's been a great resource for me and a good sounding board to realize there are other men in this area, obviously with the, DV Roundtable that share the same beliefs and passion for doing this work. So they've opened my eyes to a number of different opportunities, and I'm looking forward to being part and leading more with them. So thank you again. Look forward to meeting you all down the road.
Thank you, Jason. Paul, do you mind going next?
Sure. And I just wanted to make sure, do you want me to answer, just talk about what led me to join the group at this? Yeah, okay. So my name is Paul Corsetti. I live in Sudbury. I'm also a board member of the Roundtable. I had volunteered for REACH for several years when the White Ribbon Group and the International White Ribbon Campaign was brought to my attention, I believe by Lauren. So thank you for doing that. And for me, the White Ribbon Campaign is an important step forward. I felt for a while that the subject of domestic violence is often in the news and talked about when something terrible happens. And while that's clearly an important time to speak about the issues, it's really important to keep this discussion top of mind all the time. I had worked as an editor of a newspaper in Waltham for a while, and that's how I came to know REACH and the great work that they did. And that was one of the goals that I had, was to keep the discussion in the paper, in the news, in front of people, really constantly and consistently, because it's important to recognize that unfortunately domestic violence is happening every day in our communities and elsewhere, and so that's one of the many reasons why I'm a member of the White Ribbon Group. I'm also the father of a 2-year-old girl, and speaking in general and pretty lofty terms, I'd love to see her grow up in a world without domestic violence, and obviously that's a lofty goal, but at the very least I'm going to work on a solution to the problem. So that's another reason why I'm here.
Thanks, Paul. And do you want to speak about anything about the benefits or anything about the?
Yeah, I can do that too. I think that just overall, men need to recognize our role in ending domestic violence. So it's important that this campaign, which is a movement led by men, is raising awareness and generating discussion and running events like like we've done and continue to do. Just on a personal level, I always leave our monthly group meetings with more knowledge and a better understanding of the issues. And while planning events is a big piece of what we do, it's not the only one. We have some really deep and engaging discussions about a wide range of topics, from healthy masculinity to current events. And I really feel that all men should have discussions of this nature.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Malcolm.
Sure, thank you, and welcome to everyone who's taking part. And I'm so glad to hear these introductions again. They're inspiring to me and give me hope along the way. I've been connected with the Roundtable for about 10 years. I was a board member for some time, but needed to free myself up from that to continue on, to have the energy for the other kinds of action that I think are needed, and have been so pleased that this group's coming together and considering so much information, hard information and perspectives. I always have to bring, in introducing myself, the hard fact of my daughter's murder by her former boyfriend in 2011. It's part of what I carry along with me. But I also, with the growing awareness, it's the burden that families of 3 to 4 girls and women every day in our country also come to experience as those murders take place in our country. My own proceeding and jolting, in fact, and also fuzzy-minded wake-up moments are part of what has led me to join this group. proceeding from Lauren's murder in 2011 after she broke up with her boyfriend and returned to check on him as she'd heard he was in considerable pain and not responding as he ordinarily had, at which point he viciously killed her. There's also the sudden but gradual resulting awareness of the cultural pandemic of violence facing us. And as I've mentioned, the 3 to 4 girls and women killed each day, usually by male intimate partners, amounting to about 70,000 such murders in our lifetimes, about the same number as the American soldiers who died in World War I. There's also another current for my involvement, and that's the sudden but gradual resulting awareness, which we don't talk about enough, and that's the related aggression and cruelty of boys and men against each other, based on a striving for value and power over others, and leading to a male-on-male murder rate that's about 4 times that of the murder rate of males on females. We rank about number 50 in the world as a country of around 200 countries at 4.7 killed per 100,000 citizens, or 15,000 murders per year in 2010, according to Wikipedia. Related, please see Emma Brown's book, To Raise a Boy, for the research on male cruelty and subjugation, which I think is the framework for a lot of the aggression of males on females. They're carrying out what they've learned in their male cultures as they grow. Fourth, there's the sudden but gradual resulting awareness, thanks to Isabel Wilkerson in Caste, her book Caste, of the related core of the isms. I think there's a commonality that she points to that lead to pain, violence, and harm. And that involves the human drive to set up artificial social hierarchies, which we use to try to rise above and dominate others through violence, be it in relation to racism, genderism, wealthism, regionalism, body shapeism, religionism, professionalism, or you name it, ism. It's an important human tendency that she's identified, and I think it's an area where we can do a lot of productive work together to understand it and to tame it. And finally, in jumping to number 2, what I hope we can accomplish, and I think we've made good strides on, is that we can do much better at recognizing our drives to have power over others and to take steps to dismantle those harmful drives and rely on more humane, inclusive, and progressive values for the enrichment of and liberty and justice for all. The benefits of this group and why others might consider joining, they involve, in my eyes, creating and continuing to refine a mode of conversation and action that we need in order to recognize and adjust the harmful forces at work among us, which we often don't recognize because it's the water we swim in, and to identify and elevate and harness the positive forces, which are many within our culture and which we've again seen signs up in these contentious times that we're facing. A vital part of the work, as I see it, is to help establish for our communities, and particularly our youth, safe places like the White Ribbon Group is, safe places where youth can regularly discuss these matters as they affect their own lives and devise the means to address them effectively, including the pain and confusion involved, especially around areas like breakups, one of the most painful and confusing experiences that humans have. We don't really train for it. And the tendencies to be dragged into perpetual conflicts over who has power over others and the related shame, pain, and violence involved. And finally, as we're hoping to delve into in our next program in March, the tools of compassionate accountability needed to bring these conflicts to positive resolution. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you, Malcolm. I really appreciate that. And Malcolm is one of the inspirations for me being part of this group and continuing to be part of this group. And so just briefly, from my own point of view, when I was 7 years old, my dad died. I had 4 older sisters, and my mom was 49 years old, but she raised 8 kids. And so I had no shortage of role models for strong women. But as a young man, and then as an immigrant to America, I wanted to learn more about what it meant to be a husband and a father, and so I started playing sports. I played Gaelic football, which is an Irish thing, and then when I turned 30, I could play soccer with American men on Sunday morning, and so I learned 2 things about that. One was soccer. I wasn't a soccer player, but I just adapted the other sport. But the other thing I learned about socializing with them was who they were as husbands and fathers. And I was very interested in them because I thought they were good husbands and fathers. I thought they were good men, and I did not have role models in my life. I knew many other men in other social settings, but we didn't talk about our relationships with women in the way that we talked about it after the soccer games. And I learned a lot about respect for women, and because in other environments that I was in, the conversations didn't go along with respect. Part of the reasons for my own involvement with White Ribbon is so that White Ribbon started when there was a terrible murders on a campus in Canada, and a group of men formed in response to that. And but rather than go from crisis to crisis, and I know that it seems like the inevitability of more bad news comes about. It seems to me that by having this group of men who are willing, as the man who went before us talked about, to share ideas that will help reduce, that will help improve violent behaviors against others, including women and girls. That's why I'm part of this group. We meet on the first Monday of every month at 4 p.m. on Zoom. We've been meeting on Zoom since the pandemic. Before that, we used to meet in the Sudbury police station. It's easy you can by emailing infodvrt@gmail.com. It's in the chat, and indicating that you would like to join the White Ribbon group. And perhaps after next month, we'll have a spot on the website where it'll just be easy to click on your interest in joining the White Ribbon group. So it's at 4 o'clock on the first Monday of every month. It's sort of easy to remember. Just one more quick, I would like to open it up to some questions or comments, and maybe each of us can respond to one of them. It would be great for a little bit of dialogue. But just another little promo on what Carmen and Malcolm mentioned about March is transforming the culture of dominance on March 8th. So it'll be on Zoom at 7 p.m. for about 90 minutes. And Jason Hoy and I had a chance to interview Jack Patrici a couple of times about her vision for how to make this the most productive 90 minutes for the people who are participating. And she uses words differently. She uses language differently, and in a more she doesn't speak about abusers. She does speak about abusive behaviors. But this idea that when we use prison, and Jack's husband, who's also a presenter, has worked in the prison system a lot, and Jack has worked in the prison system a lot with people involved in abusive behaviors. But she says that accountability without any compassion becomes a replication of dominance, because we're relying again on systems of control. And it was this reliance on these systems of control that got folks into trouble in the first place. So there's got to be accountability with compassion, but also compassion without accountability is just collusion. And so she offers these key distinctions among safe relationship cycles and the dynamics that occur within relationships based on these abusive values of dominance and superiority. And it's not just partner relationships. These are relationships that young people have, groups of people have with each other. And she'll help us discern our role in all of our relationships, at work, at the community, at schools. I work at a church. At all, as examining these relationships with the framework that she's presenting, I think will be beneficial to all. And she has 15 skills and 12 strategies that she's developed. It's called From the Compassionate Accountable Conversations Skills Project that they developed over the last 3 decades. And so highlighting these 15 skills and 12 strategies, while it's not a teaching so much as a sharing and an opportunity for growth in this area, it's a very interactive format with large and small group applications throughout. So we're very excited that Jack is leading the presentation for us this year, and we're very excited about this presentation. But I'd like to just open it up now. If folks have thoughts about either the presentation or anything that you'd like to ask any of the White Ribbon Group members, comments or questions, or if you want to put them in the chat, or you could share them, that would be great.
I just want to say I'm really looking forward to this March event. In 2018, Massachusetts, the legislature enacted a Criminal Justice Reform Act that was really the greatest change in our criminal justice system in a generation, really. And it really focuses on, for example, on not keeping people out of the criminal justice system, diverting them out of the system so that their behavior is transformed, so that they are rehabilitated, so that the recidivism is greatly reduced. And we have there is so much violence in every community, domestic violence, partner violence, that recognizing ways to interrupt that violence and change behavior is crucial. So I'm really looking forward to this March event. Jack, Jack and his partner, her partner, and also Reggie Wingo, who will be participating, have so much experience in this area that I think it will really be extremely informative and helpful.
I have a question. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Mooney. I'm the Executive Director of the Melrose Alliance Against Violence, and it's nice to see some familiar faces here. We have a men's initiative as well called Men for MAVE. Our acronym for us is MAVE. And they've done a number of things. They've had some webinars. They've done some events around White Ribbon Day. But I was curious how you structure your monthly meetings, because I feel like there's been kind of there's sort of two things. The group likes to plan events, but they also really like to just spend time together and kind of bond as men and talk. And I feel like there's this sort of push-pull with the purpose of the group sometimes. I mean, those two things aren't exclusive, but I'm just curious how you structure your monthly meetings.
Jason V, do you like to take that?
As far as our meetings are concerned, as mentioned, we do meet at the beginning of every month on the first Monday at 4 p.m. Typically, we have an agenda that goes out. We spend some time focusing on different events that we are currently working on and the planning for those events. If there are other tools, resources, or incidents that are current, we spend some time discussing that. We do also build in some time to just check in and have those bonding moments to be able to talk about kind of how everybody's doing, what's going on personally and professionally for all of us so that we have that check-in time. And typically being a meeting that's only about an hour, that takes up the majority of it right there. We do have a lot of check-ins in between meetings if we are currently working on a project, be it the event in March or another event where we are all tasked with individual items that we are currently working on, just to make sure that we're all on track. So that's pretty much the structure. If I missed anything, please somebody else jump in.
I could just
Thank you.
add
That's
a
helpful.
little bit. It's also in the, going back to something I said earlier, it's when we're doing some of the planning, that sometimes actually goes off into those kind of deeper conversations that I spoke of, you know, getting into the real issues of things that just kind of naturally branches off from our event planning, because we want to make sure we're forming the best possible events that would help the most people. So again, it's in those, it's kind of throughout the whole meeting. I've found that we have those important, touch on those important subjects.
And do you have a coordinator, or is it kind of a shared leadership model?
I've assumed a little bit of a coordinator role this year, but we have a lot of help from Lauren at Reach, and she keeps us on task and helps us with ideas, and also from my point of view helps us with language and just better use of language. But I was also interested in what other of the men thought about the specific topics that we have addressed. I know Malcolm mentioned Emma's book in his presentation, but we have, you know, when things have come up and the media have addressed them, like the young woman who was did the camping trip and posted all the stuff on Instagram, and it was very, and her as a missing person, that was very well documented by the media, and yet we know about how many young women of color go missing, and people on in the reservations go missing, and there is no coverage of that at all. And so that's a conversation that I thought was very helpful for me. But are there other things that have come up recently that people wanted to talk about in the group other than the planning for the March event?
So Rebecca, one thing I would just add it's been impactful for me as being a newer member to this group is there's a lot of resource sharing in terms of readings, videos, articles that the group will kind of kick around in the in-between weeks of the meetings, and we have an opportunity to kind of read those and reflect and respond to each other. So it also helps as like a kickoff to the meeting, as a good icebreaker to respond and those thoughts. But you know, Colin, as you were saying, in terms of the individual events, like obviously many of you probably know about the tragedy that just happened in Franklin, Massachusetts, just down the street from Natick. You know, there was a 47-year-old woman was murdered by her ex-husband, and the home was set on fire right afterwards. So, you know, these are things that, you know, are happening. The Gabby Pettit, as you said, column. So, you know, current events, resources that are shared in between, there's always that hour seems to go by very quickly. And, you know, while we try to stay on task, Lauren's great at making sure that we keep time and don't go too far off the off the grid and where we're going. So that's been very helpful for me.
Most of that is because she's usually got another Zoom right after ours, so she's got a tight schedule. Yeah. Thank you for that question, Rebecca. That's a good question, and I think something that we're working on as well.
Yeah, we were super lucky. We had Craig Norberg-Baum. Probably a lot of you know Craig. He's been very involved in the movement for many years. He was on our task force when we had a federal grant, so he was sort of like an advisor to the group, and he provided tons of information, resources, guidance, everything. So when that ended and he left, we kind of tried to have the group meet on their own, and then we had a paid coordinator, but then he left. So we're kind of a little bit in between right now, but it's good for me to hear that Lauren's involved, because I think I felt like it has to be a man, like, to coordinate the group, and I'm realizing it doesn't. You know, that someone with expertise and facilitation skills and guidance, it doesn't really matter the gender. So thank you. This has been useful.
Yeah, and Lauren's role is great. Tony, thank you.
All right, so really great to see all of you. One of the benefits of Zoom is you get to attend things that are outside of your region. So I work at Jane Doe, the state coalition, for those who don't know, although I do recognize many of your faces and know some of you quite well. My question is about your recruitment process, you know, and how you think about, you know, who you're bringing in and what that process is to identify, you know, folks from different communities, to be frank, for more diverse communities than I see represented here, which I know is constantly something that we have to identify in order to then be able to, you know, work on it. And so I'm just kind of curious what thoughts y'all have given to that, what your process is for that, you know, along different sorts of ways. I was trying to, I didn't want to guess everybody's age, but I was like, average age, you know, like who's involved here and why. I mean, I see what I do love and I absolutely recognize is the different professional and community positions that you represent, which is great. So you a lot of different sectors who are represented. But thinking about some of the communities that you're there, I'm just wondering also for those, and maybe not Lincoln, Wayland, Sudbury as much, though there is some cultural diversity in those communities, but for folks who are in other places, you know, who are thinking about how to create a space, because there's some commonality, but also some differences, and just wondering how that's come up in your conversations.
That's a great question.
Not to put you on the spot, but curious.
Yeah, and that is an agenda item that is frequent about the welcoming other people, and actually this presentation is part of that. So I'd like to open that up to Malcolm. Do you have any thoughts on that about helping us grow in terms of outreach and welcome what our efforts have been?
I'm glad Tony's raising the question, and I think the fact is that this group, along with many other male groups, run into challenges that way of who's to be involved and what the focus is. Rebecca, your account of your group is interesting to me in terms of facing the challenges involved. There was one point where we lost a couple of members, one in fact through death, and we were sort of on the edge, and I think we'll sort of continue on the edge. And it's good to just bring up the topic and talk about both renewal and how to live out ways of inclusiveness that we're banging our heads up against in seeing how humans, and I think often males in particular, because they're perched, and especially white males perched on the top of this hierarchy, how to keep living out what we're encountering, how to reverse it, modify it, ease it. And your question can help us to do that more. But it is precarious for males to come together without a pretty concrete task at hand. And we suffer from that weakness. But it's good to just keep surfacing it and asking, is what's leading to this? Is there more we can do about it together to get around it, to include others, to keep our conversations open, and the agendas among the various genders, how to keep opening that matter up while we're a group of largely white, slightly aging males.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add, if you know, if anyone on this call knows of anyone who they think would be interested in being a part of this group, please, you might be thinking of that already, but I just wanted to mention it. Please either direct them to the website or do an email introduction or any way you see fit. We're always welcoming and looking for new members.
Sue, please. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to just to touch on this diversity issue. This is a problem this is an issue for the Roundtable generally. I mean, Sudbury, Wayne and Lincoln are predominantly white, predominantly relatively wealthy towns. And we've had to work at defining what we mean by becoming more diverse, and both in our makeup and in our programming, and just how we should go about that. As I say, to repeat myself, what exactly we mean by that, actually, given where we operate. And we're hoping to get some help. We're organizing a series of workshops for us all in a couple of months, and hopefully that'll help us come to develop some strategies and clarify our thoughts about where we should be going as a group. And the White Ribbon Group will be part of that discussion, obviously. If I just may ask a second quick question. Just looking at the screen today, again, we're predominantly women, female, and well, the names are, I'm assuming that they are female people behind them. And I just still wonder why it is that men do not feel this sort of compulsion and need to join in the same way that women do. I understand that amongst the survivor population, it's predominantly women, but there are men and gender non-conforming people. But essentially, women have staffed the shelters. They've reformed the bulk of the Roundtable. They're here today in a majority, I suspect. So I just wonder whether any of you have any thoughts about what it is, if you can summarize the block here. What is stopping men from stepping forward?
So I have the same question. I remember a few years ago, I was at an event that brought people in from Eastern Massachusetts, maybe like one person from every town, 40 or 50 towns, almost more than 40 towns, less than 50. And we were all together. It was a political meeting, and we were all there because we were the town coordinators for this politician's campaign, statewide campaign. And I looked around, and there were only 3 men. There were only 3 men and like 43 women. And I was scratching my head going, what's going on? Why aren't there more men here? I mean, the person we were there to support was a woman. And I'm thinking to myself, so are men so sexist that they're not jumping up to support this person because she's a woman? I mean, what's going on? I guess maybe somebody who does gender studies and has really researched it. I don't know. I have the same question. Why? Hopefully it will, as time goes by, not just time goes by, but as women, if they haven't already established parity with men in one field or another, or one type of endeavor or another, when it gets to be the norm that there's parity, maybe that will change. That will change. I was at a local 12 plumbers union, the shop they have where they train new people, and they had a crew in that they were training a dozen people, and I think they were all women. So Massachusetts at the time, this is a couple of years ago, had only 3%. I think only 3% of the workforce plumbers were women. But they told me that the way women were coming into it, that like in 10 years, it would be like 12% or 15% or what have you. In colleges now, we have more than 50% are women. It's like 51% women, 49% men. In law schools, I remember my wife's great aunt was the first woman to graduate in her law school class at Cornell. And, so maybe as we get parity and hopefully parity is accelerating in the legislature, we have more, the percentage of women is increasing all the time, but it's still too low. It's still only around 25%. Although although they must have a much higher percentage of people in leadership positions. Good question.
Yeah.
Susan,
Yeah.
I'm Russell Cramp. I'm somewhere on the screen here. I live in Lincoln as well, and I'm on this IDEA committee in Lincoln that was formed last year by the Selectmen, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity in the town. And I'm the only male on that committee. And so you asked the question, why aren't there more males? The bottom answer is that men's egos are too fragile to be with powerful women. That's my belief, so they don't want to show up. I think that it goes back to a piece that Malcolm talked about earlier, and that is how boys are brought up, because our boys are brought up to be the men that we are, which are everything is tied to our ego. It's tied to power, control. We have to get the last word, and very early in life, 4 and 5 and 6-year-old boys already have learned the rules from their father and their mother. And I think that that's really what drives all this. That self-identity, I'm going to call it fragile ego of the male, because I know every month when I'm on these calls, I'm learning, and I notice how I don't run the show. I'm just one of 10 on the call, and so I think that's really why men are really comfortable with. I'm in 3 other meetings a week where it's all men, so that's 10 egos altogether, and then what goes on is you get a pecking order that starts to develop. So I think that women don't operate in quite that hierarchical way that men see the world, and they aren't comfortable in a setting that doesn't identify the hierarchy and the patriarchy, which they've bought into for most of their lives. I'm in.
I'll add to that too, Tony. Great question, and obviously we're unpacking it all. But I see the same with kids and with students. Our Game Changers group is typically about 40, in and around 30 to 40 kids, and it's probably 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 female to male. I struggle to get young male leaders to take on this leadership role. And I think I don't have any hard evidence of this. It's just anecdotal, but I think it's 2 things. I think it's stigma and kind of perception, right? Because in order to engage in these conversations, you got to make yourself vulnerable, right? And young boys have not been kind of wired or programmed, like Russell said, by our cultural norms to take those risks, right? And then the second thing is, from what I see in our female student population versus our male, girls are generally a little more emotionally mature and tend to take more healthy risks in their learning, where the boys just like to kind of stay status quo and stick with what's comfortable, right? And that's just through my experience. The other piece of this too, when I try to get leaders, grow student leaders from within our school, you want to have some kids that have a little bit of almost social clout, right? Males and females, because the younger peers will look at them and say, hey, this is Russell Cramp. He's a musician in the band or in the fine and performing arts department. They see them as like a leader of their kind of genres. So I think it's, healthy risk taking. Boys are not as apt to do that in their learning. They like to just do with what's comfortable. And 2, I think it's a perception or stigma of like possible weakness, as Russell was saying as well, that they don't want to be vulnerable sitting in a room full of strong, powerful personalities of women that are headstrong and want to do this work and are passionate about it. But the males that we do get, and we send them on their way and get them training, like they take off and they thrive. And it's great to watch that happen to a kid when they have that kind of aha moment, and that it sticks with them, but they just, so many of them are packed into the cultural norm kind of gender box that won't step outside of it because of what other people may think or of themselves. So that's just my perception at the high school, from the high school that I'm in.
So useful, Jason. I hope we can continue to sort that out and delve into it. And Russell, what you're bringing up, I think, is so on target. Numbers of commentators talk about this same topic usefully. I think Tony Porter's emphasis on it is valuable in males being trained culturally to have a certain disinterest in what females are about, as far as being strong, independent entities with value of their own. It's part of the structuring. I get to feel more valuable if I can see you as less valuable. That Wilkerson talks about so well, and to try to open that up so we can help males explore it in spite of their vulnerability, and in spite of the fact that I think males are so often divorced from themselves around age 4 or 5 when they're told to shun their own feelings of pain and to hide them. I think that's a major part of it. And I think females may be able to help us with that in terms of mothering, and as Emma Brown talks about, how to raise boys so as to help them be able to stay in touch with that pain in healthy ways and that vulnerability in healthy ways, so that they can identify, accept, and help with the vulnerabilities of others.
Thank you, Malcolm. And yes, and thank you, everyone. And thank you for your positive messages on the chat. That's very helpful. And it does seem like we're moving the needle very slowly, but and the effects may be seen much later. But the work, we have more educators that aren't here with us right now, but obviously we're very aware of the value of the education and young people, the effects on young people, but also for people our age. So I'll hand it back to Sue now, because I know the meeting's going to end in about 1 minute, but thank you all for your participation. I really appreciate it. And it's been an honor. I speak for all the men here today. It's an honor to work with Lauren and an honor to be here today with you.
Thank you so much. I'm just so delighted to have this opportunity to hear you all speak, and we just value you all so much in the roundtable. And as Tony said it so beautifully in the chat, I mean, the needle moves slowly. Some of you heard me say this before, but Angela Davis spoke last year at a national conference, the civil rights person, Angela Davis, and she said that she counted herself as being very lucky to be alive long enough to see the changes that had occurred in society. The things were being discussed that she would never have dreamt would be discussed when she first started her work. And that she felt lucky because she'd survived long enough, and so many of her peers of the 60s and 70s had died and had not seen this. And she made the point that the changes that we are looking for may not occur fully till after we have gone. But it's important that we start and that we keep moving forward and understand that, you know, to take this longer view, which may stretch, even beyond our own lives. So I think that's very much what the White Ribbon Group's doing. It's certainly what the Domestic Violence Roundtable is doing. And I thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. And if you'd like to join the roundtable, you have the information, I hope, in the chat. If you'd like to join the White Ribbon Group specifically, if you email us and indicate that, we'll make sure your name and details are passed on to the group. And unless anyone else has anything to say, I should just say that I'm Sue Rushforth. I forgot to say that at the very beginning, and I'm the president of this wonderful organization. It's such an honor to be the president at this time. And again, thank you so much for coming, and just stay warm and have a good day and stay healthy and stay well. Thank you.